All right, optimize teamwork, 10 practical use cases. This is our goal with this is to, kind of skip past the orientation to teams and more talk about literally ways that we're seeing it being used. Obviously, there's some key features like voice and conferencing that are elements of this, but how does this all get leveraged and where are some use cases everyone's to put on their thinking caps and kind of think about where your greatest needs are within your organization. And Tim will kind of help us walk through some of those use cases.
Yes, I will. So we'll start with the agenda. It's not very complicated. So, I'm just going to talk briefly about the 10 use cases that we have. We'll ask a couple polls along the way, get a feel of what people are interested in, and then I'm going to jump in and demo all 10 of those use cases, maybe spend more time on some than others. So we'll jump right in with the first one, which is process review. We've used it internally we read at our website. And so I'll just kind of walk you through a typical workflow. You start with email, and you're emailing an attachment. And then you have a meeting, and people start generating numbers. Now you're trying to put a chart together. You're collecting all these spreadsheets back. People are taking notes. Everybody's got their own notes. They're in their own locations. Maybe someone's trying to consolidate, get a summary of that. And the outcome of this whole process is we're going to present something. And so you're using multiple applications, you're emailing over and over. People really aren't on the same page. If you happen to miss something, you have no idea where things are at, well, use Teams. All of that information is contained in one location. So you have persistent chat, you have co-authoring, and all that information is collected within a Teams site. So our first
Process
example.
could be anything from a sales proposal, which just about every organization does. As Tim mentioned, we use this for recreating and modifying some of the web pages with regards to us. It could be for budgeting. Anything of that nature is typically when there's a review process. I think emailing and attachments are unfortunately a norm, but when it comes to collaborating around those attachments, I think you've got some great tools in Teams.
All right, time for our first poll question. Does your company hold an annual event or a quarterly event or some kind of event that happens, maybe not monthly, but, there's enough time in between that, what did we do last year? That question comes back up. We'll show you how Teams can help solve some of those issues that happen around planning an annual event. So, yes, overwhelmingly. So 83% responded yes to that one. So that would be our next use case would be event planning. So in the demo, you'll see some of this. You can do polls around, what food should we have or what should the theme be? You can just collect all the information around that event, keep it in one location. So next year, when it's time to plan that event again, you don't have to go hunt it all down. So you can invite people in and out of the team, invite outside, speakers so they can be part of that process of building that event.
I'll build the top 10 Letterman list. And number 3 is?
So next up is project management. And this Teams is tailor-made for project management. The last place I worked, we used Trello. It's a project management tool. Here we use Rike. So now you can take your third-party application that you've been using for project management and bring it right into Teams. So the whole point is, keeping you in that one application, keeping all that communication in one location. It's just a natural extension of the things Team offers already and bringing in third-party pieces to help you manage your projects.
Tim, I'm going to queue up a beach ball for you. So in lieu of third-party products like Rike or Trello, is there any included project management capabilities within Teams?
Well, Planner's a great tool. It lets you assign tasks. You can do to-do lists within the task. You can set up using Power Automate and Flow, email notifications around it. So even using the built-in tools, you can come really close to what these third-party tools could do.
And if you're following strongly the Microsoft regimen, know that Planner is becoming something called Tasks. So however it's called, the functionality is such that there's some great project management light functionality built right into the Office 365 suite that you could take advantage of in Teams.
Number 4. So one of the first tasks I was assigned was to build extranet sites for some of our customers that we do a lot of managed services for. So we have some customers where we have engineers on site regularly. We produce reports for them on a monthly basis. We do a lot of project work. And so we built sites for them so we could share information with them a lot easier. And I'll show you some of this using Flow to take a report that was emailed and rename it and put it into a folder. We still email those reports to the customer, but you'd have to search through all those emails to find that one. I don't remember what month it was. I'm not real organized. We've taken care of some of those things by using some of the powers of Teams.
Yeah, any intranet site that faces externally is called an extranet. The concept, I think, has been around for dozens of years, but essentially it's for primarily that interface between you and another outside organization. There is some control of that, which Tim will demo for you with regards to guest access and what that means, and even named accounts that can be used and things of that nature. But think of the information and the ways that you interact, and think of the possibilities of an extranet light.
The next one is actually one of my favorites because it's so simple. When I was doing the research for this, I came across a 2-person team. It's an executive and their assistant. Again, persistent chat. So, what were we talking about last month? What did he ask me to do? I can scroll back through my chat and I can see it. Sharing files, co-authoring files. So we're in a meeting, I'm taking notes, my executive can see the notes I'm taking. We're working on a budget together. So we have a spreadsheet on a tab of a Teams channel just to bring that right to the forefront and make sure we're on the same page. So just a simple thing, get the ball rolling, get people starting to use Teams.
Yeah, good way to see status rather than transferring everything via email, right? But the people that are doing and the people that are reviewing all have the same view immediately. So there's less delay, I think, in work, and that at the end of the day is productivity.
So training, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can incorporate training into Teams. It can just be a collection of websites that you found that have pertinent material. You can add those as tabs on Team site channels. We're partnering with a company and they've got a whole suite of training, short video clips, I'd say under a minute to 7 minutes on specific topics with a dashboard so you can track, you can create a learning path to assign to people so you can see how they're doing, gamification so you can build in some challenges to see who's actually taking advantage of it. But again, it's one location, right? You don't have to leave whatever app you're using. It's in Teams. There's an app for it. It shows up on your app bar and just keeps people in that one location working on their information.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Obviously, moving information close to where they're at. So, whether it be Teams training about Teams, right, is obviously one distinct use for it. But it equally could be that you're going through, you're rolling out Windows 10, or you've got some security initiatives, or you're changing Office platforms, or there's just some new features coming down the road as we're starting to get to this world where features are not coming out with the latest feature pack. They're coming out on a weekly or a monthly basis, and we're having a difficult time maybe adopting and or taking advantage of these things. So the ability to aggregate some links, have it not push to their inbox for inbox overload, but instead be an actual library of links where people can go, and it kind of gives you your centralized repository. So.
Number 7 is our HR employee portal. We developed a whole portal on SharePoint, and we are working on moving that over to be a Teams site. And everything HR. So it's document management, it's onboarding for new employees, time off requests. So there's just a whole ton of information and a lot of different ways to use Teams to help people in the HR world.
Should have been a poll question, but how many people just hired someone in the last 4 months, right? Was that a remote employee onboarding? We did, right? We had an employee start 2 weeks ago. Remote employee, actually came in for 1 day, and after that, it's been remote since. But the onboarding of the employee, as an example, is one of the areas where having a portal and one spot to go, and all your forms and tasks and things of that nature are all in one spot.
Marketing. So we extensively use this at Peters and Associates. I mentioned the web design. It's just a great place to put information because we have several different people trying to look at it. So when we post blogs, when we work on product sell sheets, collecting bio information from employees, so we just one place, we put it all in there, presentations go in there, so everything's in there.
Yeah, this deck, hey Tim, where's this deck? I know where this deck is, right? It's in our marketing folder under the event date, and it's also searchable. And so if Samantha's got questions about where it is, she can create the PDF and help send that out afterwards. It's just, one-stop shopping. So.
Another poll. So do you have a system that provides chat and persistence for most employees today? Because not only does Teams have that ability, right, for you to chat with people, you can also see presence, right? So I set my presence in Teams to I'm busy. So I don't get any notifications, nothing pops up because I don't want to be interrupted in my presentation. But it's nice to see, what people are, if they're away from their desk, if they're available. So it's just an added feature in Teams that really helps you be productive.
Probably even more important right now in the remote world that we're in, just because you can't see if they're physically at their desk, right? That option's kind of been taken away. So the presence has become, incrementally more important during this time frame, and it looks like a lot of people are leveraging some chat or presence today, presumably through a Skype type system or a third party outside of Microsoft.
And that brings us to remote workforce, and this is one we added since we did this the first time, because it's become much more necessary. But it's just a great place. You can have an open chat, so it's kind of like the water cooler. You can have just a place to collect feedback from your employees. You can poll them, how's it going working from home? Collaboration, which is what Teams is really all about. A location for maybe some specific training. I was playing around with just a simple form to collect information as to whether people are going to be in or out of the office now that we're starting to return to work. And then our last one would be board meetings. So we've actually started helping customers design, their implementation of Teams, and it's one of the first ones that came up. Well, I don't want to spend money. There are platforms out there that are designed to do board meetings, but I don't need to be that sophisticated. I need a calendar. I need an agenda. I need minutes. I need a place to share files. Teams is perfect for that. You can make it public and people can join and see what's going on. You can set up private areas so that the board can, have their behind the scenes communications continuing on, and you can archive the information, turn it from a working agenda into a PDF that's permanent. So it's just a natural use, and if you already have the tool, why not use it for that?
Sometimes there's even transcription. So if Teams is used as a recording of the meeting itself, there is capability to do a voice to text transition of that. So if you wanted to, obviously there's always the meeting minutes, but in full aggregate, you could have a full text transcription if desired to.
All right. So before we get to the demo, I kind of split this up into two questions. So the first one is, out of the first 5, what interests you the most? And then we'll have a second question, because we can only ask 5 at a time. We only have 5 responses. So we'll see where people are interested, and I can focus more of the demo around those areas, but I'll try to touch on them all. There's a little bit something unique in each one, I think.
Yeah, and there was an error launching that poll, so if you could type in your question or your answers for 1 through 5, and I'll do a quick tally for everybody, and then that way Tim will have a little bit more direction. Sorry about that.
That's fine. It wouldn't be a demo if something didn't go wrong.
That's exactly right. Tim, what are we seeing in terms of, you've been involved in, I don't know, half a dozen or a dozen Teams projects for customers. What have you seen so far in terms of, strength of 1 through 10?
I wouldn't say any one of these is necessarily.
Yeah, although the number 3 I think I've seen, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Project management, yeah, because we're doing something around a project. A lot of departmental, right? I just want a place for my department to share information, not HR specific, but
right.
Right.
Yeah, so kind of number 7, but it could be, the business side of things, if you will, sales or others. So.
Right.
And right now for numbers 1 through 5, it looks like number 1 has the biggest majority. So there are a couple people that entered 3 and 4 as well. So
one of the other things I like about process review is, as an end result, right, the documents stayed in one spot, the document or other entity, whatever it might be, a spreadsheet or otherwise, but the document stayed in one spot. That was one thing that benefited. But as an end result, as a final placement too, after all the edits, it's there. It's got version control on it, so you've got capabilities to kind of roll it back to a prior version if necessary. You have some e-discovery capabilities. You've got the co-share, co-authoring, and so a lot of good functionality for sticking the document in that spot as opposed to a G drive or a file share or emailing it around. So.
Yeah. Do we want to try the second question, or?
It works.
Huh? So just continuing on process review, the first webinar we created in our Teams webinar series, that's how we did it. So we created a channel in a Teams site. We started collecting information. We had shared OneNote notebook where we were all finding links and putting in statistics and other information. And then our PowerPoint went in there. We were able to co-author it, and it was just great. And now every time we go to update that, I just refer back to that Teams channel and that presentation, and I make a copy of it and kind of tweak it for the next time. So
this is a loaded question here, Tim. I'm pretty sure we're going to get remote workforce on this one, but we'll see.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's like I'm Nostradamus or whatever his name was. Yeah, it's obviously gotten a lot of notoriety for that functionality here in recent months.
So here are the top 10. These are actual Teams sites. I took this picture right out of our demo tenant. So let me get out of PowerPoint and open up Teams. That was interesting. So the first one we have here is website review. Clicking like crazy here. So I guess we'll start with the files. So just for some orientation, the left here, this would be the app bar. That's where you see Teams. And then within the Teams, you see your Teams sites. And then under a Teams site, you see channels. And then under the channels, you see tabs. So it's just the lingo I've been using. People may call it whatever they want, but this is what Microsoft calls it. So we're on the same page. So every channel that gets created has posts and files. Those come by default and you can't get rid of them. So we have the files. We will throw up a web page here, and then we will assign tasks. And so we're using Microsoft Planner, and then we can create some different buckets. So for different things, so it could be a general, it could be a website, could be an event. And then within that, here's the page we're reviewing, and we've assigned the people that are going to be reviewing it. So I just mock this up in our demo tenant. These, it all looks a little weird because the names are weird. But then what I did was I took a picture of the actual site that we use. And so this is how do I do it? A web page that just has a picture in it. So you'll be able to see, here it comes. So this is out of the Peters and Associates actual Teams site. And so you can see Bruce is on here and Samantha's on here. And so they're actually assigned to these different tasks. So it's simple,
Part of the
it's
joy
straightforward.
when you put out 3 blogs a week, you have to go through some editing process to make sure that those blogs say the right words and are grammatically correct and so forth. So it's extensive process review. Each organization may have their own. Again, you might be putting out 20 proposals a week, or have other documents essentially that need to go through some process or review or otherwise. And workflow, assignments, and visibility, right? Notifications to your inbox to kind of pull you back into the site. All of those are key components.
So when I was setting up the demo, I just wanted to make sure that my demo guy got an email whenever a file was posted. So I just created a simple flow that if a file was added to the file location, an email was sent. So I would just make sure I was notified when those things happen. Just simple tools. It's built-in template. Anybody can do it. It's no code, which is one of the great advantages of Flow.
And outside of that, Tim, I think you would, not that we're going to discuss Teams at that level, but each individual can have different levels of notifications for how they want to get notified, whether it be banner bars, things like pop-ups and things of that nature, depending on how quiet or noisy you want it to be when that event occurs.
Yeah, you can do things like @mention, which will pop something up in your activity. You can customize your own notifications to minimize the noise. And that's one of the big advantages of Teams, is that the information that's most important can be called out, whereas email, everything's treated the same. Unless you set up rules, which can get really complicated, and sometimes things get filed away and you don't notice it. So I think Teams has the advantage there to call out the information that you need to see and minimize, but it's still there. You can go back and read posts that people have made and catch up on things when you have the time. So under the annual conference, things I wanted to show, just the concept that we have an area for the facility. And so I've just created some folders where we know last year in 2019, right? We put the files we used there. I set up a new folder for this year. So we're going to copy some of that stuff forward. We're going to create some new stuff, but that's how we're organizing our files. I was able to use a third-party app called Poly, which is just a quick polling tool. And so you can post this out to the people that are part of that team site, and they can respond, what do you want the food options to be? So it shows right up. Everybody can see what's going on. It's transparency, keeping people on the same page. You don't have to send out a poll, wait for people to respond via email. It's right here, right on the page. I think I did another one on theme as well. So I stole an idea from Bruce on, right? We definitely want it to be vision for 2020. So
exceeding the vision. Yeah, and Tim, if you don't, maybe it's a segue, not necessarily a how-to, but third-party apps. You mentioned a few here that have already been added in. How do those get added in? And I guess not less how-to, but maybe you can talk to the third-party apps that kind of can make teams really come alive for organizations.
So you just click the add tab option at the top, and it pops up third-party apps. And I think the last time I checked, there were over 500. So chances
are these apps free? Which one, how do you determine which ones are free, which ones are not? And what's been your experience with regards to, the trial that they probably have on some of these?
Yeah, everyone has a trial. Some have free options within them. So there's an attendance one I'll show you in a little bit that just limits functionality based on what you're using. So if there's something that you use regularly, it's a website you go to, a portal that you use, come in here and see if there's an app for it, and then chances are, if you're already using it, you may have that license covered already, or you can do some exploring here, and if you have something in mind, you might be able to find an app that will help with that particular need.
So this is where people are writing their apps to. Concur for expense management, and Salesforce and others are writing their apps to teams so that they can get presented here. Our training application is available here too, and you might see it on the left-hand side.
Yep. So the demo site that was created for this, they put a bunch of stuff in there to kind of give you some stuff to talk about. So I'll show a few of the things that they have kind of pre-populated here. And this is the Mark 8. I think it's a big printer or something.
So this is for project. This is for project management.
Project management, right? Okay.
So here's probably the most popular use case according to our polls. So.
Right. A real simple concept of posting a Word document in a channel, and you can actually edit this right here. It's loading. So it's Word Online. So I could come in here and edit this document. There we go. People could co-author it right here. If you didn't want people editing it, you could post it as a PDF document. But again, it's just getting that information in front of the people that need it. If we go to market plan here, we're using a bunch of different things. We're doing some planner tasks. We're doing Excel. We have PowerPoint. So different tabs with different information, all pertaining to a specific part of the project. So I think the roadmap is an Excel spreadsheet. There we go. And so, in the files area, that is where the spreadsheet lives, but it's been posted here so that, it's easy to find. And it could be we're doing versions of this, or we've scrapped one and we've got another one, but we keep all the files in that location, but the one we're working on, we've put up here in a tab. I think the product brochure is actually a PowerPoint presentation. So yeah, you could have all these things in the files area, but this just makes it a lot easier to get to the stuff you're working on. So, and here's a PowerPoint in a tab of a Teams channel. And then the last thing I wanted to show was under research and development and how they've incorporated Power BI to create a dashboard to bring in some information. And these are all, tools that are just part of the default product. There's nothing extra. This is all just built in. And Power BI is a great tool, but people don't want to go out to another place to find that information. So you can create these great dashboards, but I'm working on this project. I want to see where we're at. I'll just come to the Power BI tab, and here's all that information that we're pulling from a bunch of different areas, and I don't have to go out of Teams to find it.
Tim, if I had 5 projects I needed, I don't know, let's say executives desired some visibility into 5 projects that I'm managing, although, there might be more. Would you envision that as 5 distinct teams, or would that be 5 channels within the project management team?
Good question. And it really comes down to who needs that visibility. So a team site, if you have access to the team, you have access to all the channels underneath.
Okay.
So if some projects are for certain audiences, then they need to be their own team site.
Their own team site. Okay,
And
that's a good distinction.
that's how you control, right. One of the first part of Teams is user voice. And you have the ability to request, modifications. And one of the first ones that came up was subsites. Because wouldn't it be great if I could just have a, projects site, and then underneath I could have subsites. Microsoft said no. We're thinking about it, flat out no. So that's not an option. So you just have to create team sites. And you have the ability, I have hidden teams down here. So you can drag these around and organize them how you want. You can hide ones that you're not using anymore. So you have the ability to kind of control what you see and what's applicable to you. And if you're not part of the site, it doesn't show up.
Right.
So I think there are other ways.
I think there's, people sometimes have this sequential, I would like to categorize all the things that are on my screen, but indeed these team sites tend to be a little bit, some can be very transitory, right? It could be a project that's lasting for 3 weeks, and indeed it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so does that team site, right? The team site can be there, it could be hidden, and furthermore, I think as you showed in Teams initial, it can be archived, right? Where you actually are putting it away for future pull up if you ever need it, but in general, it's kind of gone from your normal Teams day to day.
So jumping into the Extranet site, the first thing I did was I exported a list of contacts from our database, and I put it into a PDF and I posted it on the site so that everyone knew who we were dealing with. So this is just some information I found. It's not anybody, but it's a PDF document and it lives here. And so if an engineer is going on site, they know who contacts are. The company can review that list and make sure it's up to date, the emails are right. And then I thought, well, okay, now we need to know where. Almost every company has a locations part of their website. So I would just put a link to their website, and these are our locations. And then I did some fancy stuff with Flow again and SharePoint, and I was able to generate an export of people and times, and then I was able to import that into a SharePoint list. And so this is just a calendar view of a SharePoint list showing when people are going to be on site. And this is something that could be automated. I did it for the demo, so that's why it doesn't go past March. But each month then that list would get refreshed, and they would just come in here and they could see who's scheduled to be on site. And so some of the bigger areas we deal with, that's just general information, but our managed services branch, and this is where, right, what services do we have? So I pulled right out of the contract again, created a PDF document, posted that here. So here's the things that, right, we're contracted for. And then more useful information would be a link to where you can put a ticket in. So if you're having an issue, right, and this is just a link to a website. So you log in with the credentials we gave you. These are, it's not something you use regularly, but when you need it, you need to know how to find it. And then we offer monitoring, remote monitoring. And so here's the login for that system. So it's putting that information in one location. It's easy to find. I know before I was an employee of Peters & Associates, I was a client. So either things that maybe once a year or every couple years, I would want to know. And then I have to start searching my email again. Where's that site where I can see what's going on? Because they monitor it for me, but I had the need to look it up myself. So other than that, we use it just for collaboration. So documentation, when we collect information, we take pictures of stuff, we diagram the information that's on premise, and then we do a lot of project work. So same thing, just creating file folders with those projects so that the project managers, the account managers, and the customer can all be on the same page. So.
Yep, switch and router configs and all that good stuff. It needs a home, and email's not a good spot. So.
Yeah. So here is the one. It's the two-person team. So we've got a place to share files. It's not a shared drive because sometimes you can't always get access to those. But with Teams, you can access it on your phone, smartphone. There's an app for that. Any browser will get you into it, or the client. So just an easy way to get in the presentations we're working on, the budget we have. I created a shared OneNote notebook, and the nice thing with this is you can open up that notebook from OneNote itself. You don't have to go into Teams to get to it. So if you're used to working in OneNote, it's just another area in OneNote where you have your notes. And then I threw up, if you saw under files, there was a budget. So I'm going on a trip and I need to make sure I stay in budget. So we posted that here as a spreadsheet. And so we both have, right, we can see what's going on. So I'm currently over budget. So I can come right into the spreadsheet and take out the gift amount. I think he's running a little slow today.
No, don't take away the gift.
Yeah.
And you can imagine the third-party apps that might be helpful here too, right? If you as an organization leverage expense management, right? You could do expense tracking or expense management through a third-party app. You could do project management, right? If this particular person needs, visibility into a few projects, things of that nature.
So next area is training, and there was a bunch of different things we came up with here. First thing I did was I just put a link to Microsoft's free Teams resources. So this is just a link to a web page, and here's all the stuff that Microsoft has for free. So it's good stuff. A little difficult to find some real specific questions. So we have clip training. So it's just a channel, and I've got some different tabs up here, but there's also an app. It just makes it really easy to find. So if we jump into clip training, see if I'm still logged in. Nope. Sign in. I can just show you, there's a dashboard. I don't have anything in here right now because this is just for my demo people, but you can see a real-time activity of who's looking at lessons and logging in, stats on the users that, and competitions, just all kinds of information, the paths you set up, just a great way to track what people are doing. And then I just did a couple separate tabs up here with specific training. So this would be a list of the teams specific. There's 49 lessons. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes. I think the longest one was 7 minutes. And the shortest one is maybe 40 seconds. I actually used this myself because I pinned a channel to my Teams site and I didn't remember how I did it. And so I came back in here and I found the video I watched and I rewatched it. Oh yeah, that's how I did it. So great for those simple questions, right? I watched that video. I don't remember. Yeah, you can find it on Google, but it may take you a while. It may send you down a rabbit hole and an hour later, you still haven't answered that question. So the couple I threw up here were for Teams and for OneDrive, because behind the scenes, right, with Teams, you have SharePoint, you have OneDrive, you have Exchange. So all those things are kind of working in the background. So getting more information on what those capabilities are really helpful.
Yeah, the other nice thing about this, obviously, is the ability to, when new features are occurring in Teams, something like, I don't know, pop-out chats, which I think just rolled out a few weeks ago, or I don't know, not sub channels, private channels, things of that nature. Those are things that then there's a corresponding training that comes out to it too. So, and you get to see the new training kind of get added in there. You can either assign it as part of learning paths, either optionally or mandatory for your employees, things of that nature. So, it's different than just content. It's content with the wrapper of, reporting, assignment, visibility into who's doing what, and kind of testing and other sequencing that kind of proves that you've taken the training and understood some sort of benchmark.
So another metric I would guess into your Teams adoption is utilization. So we're trying to roll out Teams. We've got licenses assigned. We've created team sites, but are people using it? And so when I was researching that question, Microsoft has a Power BI dashboard all around, right, the Office 365 utilization. So if I was looking specifically at Teams, I could just jump down here into the Teams portion of it. But this is tracking, it's pulling from all the different areas of Office 365, and it's, right, bringing all that data into one location. So I can see month by month of, right, who's enabled and who's actively using. My data is a little weak because I only have a few people in here, but if you look at this on a real site, it's great. We implemented this for a customer and they were 75% utilization of Teams and they had no idea. So they kind of rolled it out there and people were jumped right into it. But we want to get it from 75, we want to get that higher. So now you have a way to monitor that. And then just, other apps. So we showed apps earlier. I found this Mind Miser, which is a just kind of a brainstorming mind mapping application. So it was free. I'm like, it's perfect for training. We could, get people together and start throwing out ideas.
I think that looks like my map, my mind map right now.
Yeah. There it is.
There it is.
So I put it in here and I'm like, well, I don't know how to use it. So I found a YouTube video getting started with Mind Miser. And so I added it as a tab. Maybe I should put that first. So you watch the video first before you use the app. But now you have a video tutorial on how to use the app right there in the same location as the app. And you name what it is you're trying to do, right? We can find a way to create a channel around it and gather that information. It could be links to other websites. It could be documents, right, with best practices on how to do things or training materials that you already have. So employee portal, we talked about it. We're developing a Teams site specific to this information. And So when I was kind of looking at what capabilities are, I came across an attendance bot. And so here's a shared calendar. And I played around with it a little bit. And if I come over to this application here, I can do, it's super simple to use. So I did a sick day for today, even though here I'm working, but I could do work from home tomorrow. So I can just chat with this bot. So I sent it the message, please confirm, yep, I'm going to work from home tomorrow. And now what it's going to do is it's going to send a notification to my manager for approval. So I'm actually logged in on a web browser as the manager. Oh, here it is. So Tim Holman has requested work from home tomorrow. So if I approve that, and then I think it'll ask me, you want to add a note? No, I'm good. And I also got notification that my request was approved. So now I can come back over to that Teams site. And if I look at the calendar, it should be updated. And we should see an entry for working from home tomorrow. So I'm on the free plan. There it is, working from home tomorrow. Super simple. So things like this, right? I think there's a lot of application for.
Yeah, one of the things that's helpful too is just, from us personally, right? We do something like this for our vacation requests, and we don't use an attendance bot, but we do have an approval process, and it does get populated to calendars. It's kind of nice, you're at month 6 and you want to look back and go, how many vacation days do I have? And, where did I take them? Oh yeah, that's right. I took those in January or February. Just being able to look back as an employee at your calendar and kind of what has been approved and things of that nature is helpful. So electronically doing attendance is something that has some value for both the employee and from management perspective.
So we do a lot of marketing. And so we have a marketing calendar, which we actually have in a spreadsheet. And so that's one of the tabs here. Just super slow.
It's a colorful one. It's a colorful one.
So just, something that you work on and you try to share with people. But again, if you email that around, well, it's going to be out of date as soon as you hit send. So if you want to see what's going on the marketing calendar, come to the marketing team site, go to the calendar panel and click on, the tab that has the calendar. So I copied some of the stuff out of our actual site, but under our employee info area is where we're collecting bios. So when we do events, we like to have bios and photos. So we're collecting that information. I think here is where we do some more, where we were doing the website stuff up at the top. This is just specifically in the marketing area of how we were using. So this is just a link to the web page where we have our blogs. And then we actually did a form here around collecting information for funding. So it's a great perk. Microsoft has different incentive programs. And if you qualify, then you can, get money from Microsoft to do a project. So here's just a simple form to collect, that information. It dumps to a spreadsheet. You can do all kinds of stuff with it once it's in there.
Stop the email madness, right? Here's an ability to ask for the right information depending on what program you're signing up for. You can have the form change and effectively collect the right information the first time so that we can go out, apply for funding, and get some help on starting your project.
So again, under presentations, just another place to collect, right, the stuff we're working on. We're running out of time. I'm going to jump into my remote workforce because I know that's one people were interested in. So we actually did some weekly webinars, and I did a presentation on this. And now that people are working remotely, things like goals and other ways of communicating have changed. So I created a bunch of tasks in Planner. And so my thought was, I'll create a bunch of goals and I'll just let people sign up for them. So I did 3 goal areas, and I put a few different goals under each one. And so it's just there's a lot of different ways you could do it, but this is just how I chose. And then I made it public so people you see who's working on what. If you feel like, right, I've accomplished that goal, you can go in and check yourself off. And so just a way to track and share that information. In terms of communication, this is where I was talking about that kind of virtual water cooler. So this is just open to the organization. Anybody that wants to come in here and post information can. I'm like, how do you get the conversation started? I used Microsoft Flow to pull the weather in each day and post it in the channel. So today, mostly cloudy, right? High of 85. On this humid day, rain is expected in the evening. So
one of the things Microsoft just did yesterday, I think wasn't it yesterday, Tim, that they started pulling all the system messages out of here.
Yes.
When a new employee was getting added to the team, it used to show new person added, right? And it's not a real conversation starter all the time. So it's kind of a system message. They started pulling those out so that you can just focus on having good conversations with your posts.
And so this, on that same line of communication, what's your communication policy? So here's a Word document, right? And just a place to keep that information in front of employees. It's probably one of those things that you read once, right? When you were that new employee and you had your new employee orientation, and maybe you saw it at that point and you're checking off, yeah, I read it. Well, now it's right here. So it's an area where you come to collaborate, and that policy is right there just to keep people up to date on it. The collaboration piece is straightforward because that's what Teams is all about. Under employee input, here's where I created another form just to get feedback. So it's a culture survey. So I think I did 5 questions, right? How you feeling about the company, about work, about how we're doing? Are you inspired, right? Are they aligned? Would you recommend right, as a good place to work? 4 questions. So you can submit that, and then I can come over here and I can actually look at those responses. So depending on how you have it set up, this can be anonymous. You can not have the responses show here. You can put those somewhere else so people can just submit. So I've got 3 responses. I can see how we're doing. And it's something you can change on a regular basis. And this is also then where I started playing around with, okay, well, who's in and who's out? Because we kind of want to know. So I just did, well, okay, who's in and out today? Are you in? So pick the day. I am out today. And so behind the scenes, this is all going into a spreadsheet. So if I click on edit in out, and I can look at the responses. And here's where you can take this and really make it fancy by associating that spreadsheet with Power BI and creating a dashboard. But just for simple, if you just want to know just kind of overall, as people have been filling this out, you'll get an idea if people are in or out, and then you can open up the spreadsheet to get the details of it. And so then I took it one step further. Okay, well, let's look at a week's time. So I did a whole week's worth of, are you in or out? So, right, first day of the week. So on Monday, you would put this in and then fill out your availability for the week. And what I liked about this was I created a spreadsheet, and then I did some conditional formatting, and I highlighted when people were in red. And so it's just a real easy way to see, and it's nothing fancy, right? It's just basically creating a Word document. That's all it is. So when the spreadsheet opens up, you'll see all the different responses that I put in there. And then with that conditional formatting, it makes it real easy to see who's in and who's out.
Just thinking out of the box, obviously, Teams has the capability to have availability information. Also, there's something called location-based services, where it actually can determine if your device is hooked up to a switch, which is at your office, or off a wireless that's at your office. So you can populate Teams to say, hey, I'm in the office now. This is a little bit more like a form, like asking, are you going to be in the office? So it depends on what you want to accomplish, but certainly number of ways to get that accomplished.
So just real quickly touching on the board meeting, I just set it up real basic. I organized it by year, so you can actually create folders. So for every month. So if you go under June, you can say I put in the agenda for June. And then any reports you would have or attachments, there's the agenda. What I did here was I linked in a Office 365 calendar. So if you had a resource for a room or a generic calendar, maybe that your board uses for communication, you could put events on it. And so this is an actual Office 365 calendar with, you know, the actual events right on it. Again, here's the agenda. That would be a Word document posted in a channel. So the current agenda is right there. And, you know, an administrative task would be each meeting, you put the current one up there, and then just a place to take minutes. So I think we've used our hour. Jump back to PowerPoint real quick. A few things. Call to action. We're really good at helping people kind of go through this. You bring in the people you want to participate, and we can kind of repeat this or focus on a few of these and help you get started with Teams. A big part of this, and it's a whole separate webinar, is the governance piece. The last time I looked, there were 88 different settings in Teams itself that need to be probably reviewed. They try to do the default best settings, but there are some that you definitely need to look at, especially around guest access and when information gets shared. So definitely something that we're well versed in and can help with. And then a couple webinars coming up. So we'll cover voice and conferencing, spend an hour on that. I actually have a demo where I can connect my cell phone and show you the Teams app on my cell phone, where I go from a chat to a call. I can go into a meeting and share information. And then on the 23rd is that governance. So there's a lot of information around governance that if you really need to address those things before you get started, or you could have a mess on your hands and you're sharing stuff that you don't want, and people are creating sites that they shouldn't be, and so just something to think about. All areas we can help you with.
Great. Yeah, nothing, I don't see any questions in the queue. Samantha, do you see any?
Yes, I
Sure.
see
Okay.
just a couple. The first question is, I know there is a 1 TB limit on individual M365 storage. What is the storage limitation of all the information in Teams? does it count against the individual storage a person would originally upload to the data or upload the data? Sorry.
I can answer that, Tim, if you'd like, or you go ahead.
Sure.
So the storage limit is basically on an Office 365 tenant level. It's equivalent to SharePoint storage. Generally, you get I forget what the formula is for what you get, but I think it's something of the nature of 10 gigabytes plus half a gigabyte per licensed user, and that's what you get for shared storage between SharePoint, Teams. This is completely separate from OneDrive and the individual storage assignments for them. So you add up that formula, and you'll have some amounts of gigabytes available storage. If you get close to that, you'll get alerted, notified, and the purchase of additional storage is quite easy and relatively inexpensive. I believe we're looking at 5 cents a gig from there forward.
Awesome. Another question is, can one have a shared Excel spreadsheet for simultaneous multi-user functionality in Teams? Does Teams have a replacement for MS Project?
So you definitely do a shared workbook in Excel, a spreadsheet. So anything that is posted in Teams, you can co-author, either using on the online version of Excel or using the desktop version. So that functionality is all built in. What was the other question?
And just for an additional detail, it does something called cell locking. So any individual cell can be updated by any individual user, but you could have right in cells next door, you'd see little icons. Joe's updating this, Frank's updating that, Sally's updating this. So the icons are right there on the screen. They'd kind of be dancing around as the cells are getting updated, and it's just locked to the individual user. It's been tested with greater than 99 people co-authoring one document or one Excel spreadsheet. And the other question was, what was the second half of that?
Just a second, I lost it. Does Teams have a replacement for MS Project?
Project.
Yeah, project's pretty. It's pretty full-featured project management. Certainly there's views for Gantt charts and resource tracking. It is full-fledged project management. I think that 80% of the functionality, or kind of what most organizations need from a project perspective, are handled with the complexities in planner/tasks within Teams. There are also obviously third parties that Tim alluded to, but if you're looking for full project management, I think that there's interactions between teams and a project or a project management server, but planner and tasks are what 80% of what we would point to for project management.
Right.
Awesome. Another question was, does Teams require MS 365 cloud storage, or can one use their own internal storage?
It's all in the cloud. So behind the scenes, it's SharePoint and OneDrive and Exchange. So if you don't have that cloud presence, you're going to miss out on some functionality. So.
And even if you had a one-user tenant, you still get, according to that formula that I gave before, 10 gigabytes plus 0.5 gig per user. So you'd have 10.5 gig of space to store your Teams and SharePoint data on the back end. So pretty significant start.
Awesome. And then another question's two-part. How does Teams interface with Skype for Business? Is Teams licensed on its own, or does it appear beneath some other license?
So Skype for Business is going away in about a year. So that's part of our other presentation. There is some integration between the two. There's some different modes. What we recommend is the islands mode, where you have Teams as an island and Skype as an island. And the purpose of that is to get you to migrate from Skype to Teams. And the saying is, right, islands are vacation. You don't stay there. There are some other modes where you can have some integration between the two, but it really makes the transition a lot longer and a lot more difficult. So our recommendation would be implement Teams, put it in Islands mode, get people used to it, and then just cut over, or Skype one day or Teams the next. I don't remember the other part.
Is Teams licensed on its own, or does it appear beneath another license?
Teams is generally available, in almost all plans. It's not something you need to typically purchase separately. It's part of E1, it's part of frontline worker SKUs. So basically Teams is available and capable of doing all the things that you saw today. When we get into voice and conferencing next week, in 2 weeks, Tim will show you, actually it's next week, Tim will show you, the voice and conferencing element, which are additional capabilities on top of Teams to light up the dial tone or to light up the capability for people to dial in to a meeting. Again, Teams does natively come with the capability for people to have an internet connected device and participate in a meeting or interoperate and collaborate, as Tim showed today. But to dial in using a traditional phone and dialing digits, that would require the conferencing license, and to have it dial out to the public switch telephone network, that would require a voice license.
Okay, and that segues kind of pretty nicely into our final question. The question was, can we make external call chat to someone outside the company who has Teams?
Yes, so Teams is naturally federated, we'll call it, with other organizations. There is a capability to allow only certain domains with which you would like to federate, or to prohibit certain domains, but generally it's open for communication from teams to teams. And just last week in preview, it's actually providing capability to do Teams to Skype interoperability too, where a Teams user can actually search for and start a one-to-one message with including audio and video with a Skype user. And Skype users can do similar with Teams. So that's in preview. They decided to grab the 300 million people that are leveraging Skype and allow some capabilities there to interact with people in Teams.
Awesome. Well, that was our final question, as I mentioned before. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And thank you, Tim and Bruce, for the awesome presentation. Everybody have a great day.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.